Hey guys, welcome to the Understanding Politics podcast. Today we're going to be continuing on with our debate from last week with David Jaeger, friend of the show. Before we jump in, we'd like to just thank Podmatch once again for helping make all of our episodes possible. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Enjoy.
I did want to say something, Michael. I didn't want to explain it because you said it in between a whole lot of stuff. But when you said that there's no incentive to work in these countries, or capital incentive, um, I feel like just having capital there as a sort of incentive itself is wrong. I feel like, and this is just my moral compass or anything, I feel like the incentive should be able to be. I feel like having a capital incentive is the reason why we're in such a pickle today, and so materialized and so concerned with what the next door neighbor has and us wanting it, that's sort of the whole sort of thing. It is good to have nice things. It is good to have, like appliances and all of that, and they can definitely, they should exist. They should exist to make people's lives easier. I feel like having a capital incentive is in itself is implying the notion that people are naturally lazy, where and this is the thing, it's the preconceived sort of notion is that people will always be greedy. That's just human nature, and people will always be, want to destroy each other, and that's just human nature. But I feel like I refute that in a sense that um, people aren't naturally evil. People aren't naturally anything. I feel like it's people's natural behavior is determined by their materials, their instant material surroundings, upbringing. It's a whole sort of different thing. So I feel like, in a sense, to say there's no capital motive is to say that people are lazy. But I feel like what motive there should be is a motive to live. I feel like that's what it should be. I don't think there should be any sort of capital to motivate people. I feel like the motivation should be, look at what you're doing for your community. Like, look at the roads, look at the infrastructure, look at the public transport, free public transport, look at the healthcare, look at all of this.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it sounds idealistic. And all that sort of stuff, but I genuinely do think it can work. I do think it can be like that. And I feel like, I don't know, it's sort of like, if you see an elephant juggling in a circus, do you assume that that's its nature? Of course not. It's because it's been told to do that. It's because it's been taught to do that. It's been tortured to do that. And so that's what it's going to do for an incentive to get fed and to have shelter and all this sort of stuff. I don't know. I feel like that's the whole sort of. I know it's hard. It's probably hard for you to understand, but I know it's. I'm not sort of like trying to belittle you here, like saying, "Oh, it's too hard to understand," sort of thing. But it's. I feel like in my head it's so complex that there's no easy way out, and it's sort of like China and all that sort of stuff. I'm not for that. I don't stand with China. I don't stand with all of that sort of stuff. There's things that happen in Cuba that are excellent. There's things that happen in Cuba that are excellent, and there's things that happen in Cuba that are awful. And there's things that happen. There's things that happen everywhere that are good and bad and whatever. You just got to take them with them, and then sort of by the moral compass of the West and all that sort of stuff. Not sort of westernized, but sort of educate in a way.
Yeah, I mean,
because these countries have a right to exist with their culture and traditions. It's just a way of modernizing it.
True, but the way I think about it now is like what you just described there as a command economy, and that has been tried in East Germany, and people were fleeing East Germany like crazy. I mean, that's what I think. That's what I think. I think you're right in the sense that humans want, we don't want to be materialist or needy, or humans, as someone who's a SOCDEM, I believe that, or like a follower of Immanuel Kant, ethical capitalism. But I think I think still at the end of the day, no matter how conscious a human is, they're going to see that new car, that new job. It's not even the material, it's the status is what drives people absolutely nuts at the end of the day. And I also think too, with communism, it also, or not, I don't want to say command economy, is that it stifles innovation because there's not a free flow of money. It's all transactional through the government. And so the government is just a lot slower when it comes to investing in the right materials, like a federal jobs guarantee or something like that. It's just too much. It's too much hassle. I mean, it
Yeah.
all.
But then again, you got to think that this where command economy was set up right next door to a place that the West was constantly funding, and all of this sort of stuff. So it's and Russia at the time didn't have anything to be able to do that. They probably don't even have today to be able to do anything like that. So they were seeing how quickly it wasn't necessarily the capital. What they were seeing was the stark quickly evolving build-up of this area over here that looked way better than what they were currently living in. But I feel like and look, I'm not saying that like, oh, we should go back to East Germany sort of stuff. People should be able to I feel like dividing Germany up is sort of foolish. I feel like, I mean, if it's sort of that same notion. If you're living in your house and you look next door and your neighbor's got a fast car, I don't know, Lamborghini, I don't know what people like.
Bugatti.
You're going to think, hey, that's a pretty cool car. I wish I had that. And then when you get that, what happens? You've got that car. Where do you go from there? You see the next big thing and you go to that. So I feel like it's sort of that in simplified.
Yes.
We sort of simplified.
We work towards the next thing. Exactly. I agree.
But for what? Because these things don't actually matter.
I know. That's the thing. That's how dumb we are. I know. That's what I mean. That's the problem with communism too, is that we try to command economy. It's essential in a command economy that we ration out how much capital we put towards food, how much we put towards, maintaining the apartment, the housing stock, stuff like that. It tends to fall flat and short because capital demands more, people demand more, they attain to higher living standards, and then the money's not there, and then we stay stuck. And then the worker, they get none of their money back from their job because it's all going to the government, and the government's poorly funding anything. And that's kind of where we're at, is that people want to have access to their earnings, and that's the sweet spot with social democracy, in my opinion.
Oh no, people are allowed their earnings under communism. I feel like that's a miseducation sort of thing. People are entitled. What there is it's not the profit. It's not where the profits go. It's where the production is controlled.
Well, that just didn't happen in East Germany. So I mean.
Oh no, and it didn't happen
I'm
in the USSR. It happened. It happened for a very short moment.
Very short.
Yeah, it happened for a very short moment because Stalin. He wasn't really, he wasn't a good bloke. And if you can look at him on the political compass, he very, 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 he's far away from Lenin, Trotsky, even Marx. Very far away from Marx. In fact, Marx was almost on the opposite of
but he did
Stalin.
say social democracy was what, the moderate wing of fascism. Like, do you believe that?
I feel like it's enabling. I feel like it's enabling corporations, and I feel like this is what I feel. This is how I think of it, and I could explain it, but it would take me literally like days. So if you wanted me to write a Word document, I could. But I feel like capitalism is the tool of fascists, and I feel like socialism is the tool of communists. And I don't think there can be any sort of moderate, because I feel like I feel like that in itself is compromising yourself. And there's two different things. There's compromise. There's compromising with. There's no issue with compromisation. Compromisation should exist. However, compromising yourself is a full different thing. And I feel like compromising yourself is allowing both. Look, I'm not saying it couldn't work. It could work. Anything could work if done right. So I feel like socialist capitalism is in itself, and this is the thing. It's like I keep on saying socialist democracy and all that sort of stuff, but they can be socialist communists. They can be fascist capitalism. It's different. It's just an economical sort of thing, and then there's a governmental sort of thing. There's a legal sort of thing. They're two very different things. So then to just notion that democracy is inevitably the enemy of capitalism. Democracy is inevitably the enemy of communism is a complete falsehood, and that's what the Red Scare was trying to say. There can be democracies under capitalism, and there can be democracies under communism. There can be dictatorships under capitalism, and there can be dictatorships under communism. Because we've seen it through history. These both things have happened. I'm not for dictatorships. That should not be a thing at all. Like, we're so past that. It's such an ancient thing. It's almost like having a king or a monarchy. It's something that's just so old-fashioned, and I feel like democracy in itself is the way forward. But it should be. I feel like it should be implemented in a different way. I feel like the way that it is in the West at the moment is political parties in themselves have become a brand and more or less a clique and a group. And if you don't go with that group, then the other group hates you. It's the reason why I don't vote. It's the reason why when I drive to the polls or drive someone to the polls, and I look out my window and I see people wearing their blue shirts or their red shirts or their green shirts and all of that, I feel like in my head, I automatically I already sort of pair that with the sort of nationalism and the sort of patriotism that people get at a football game or anything like that. I think it's trivial, and I think it's not necessarily needed. And I feel like with my sort of way, and I know it sounds idealist, and I know it probably won't work, but I really do want to try it. Abolishing political parties, I feel like, is the only way to unify. And I do really think that people become unified. I feel like the only reason why division exists is because you can allow division to exist, and it's enabling it. I feel like in a way to merge unity, first you need to get rid of identity. And I'm not saying national identity, because people should be realized in good terms of their background. My family came from Germany. We're Jewish immigrants. We were Jewish and Russian immigrants of the Second World War. Before that, on my mum's side, they were Irish people who, you know, all that sort of stuff, Irish, British, all that sort of stuff. I feel like that should be recognized, and I feel like we should go together in hand sort of thing. I know it sounds idealist, and a lot of people don't want it. It's funnily enough, you see like a lot of right-wing groups and all that sort of stuff. And look, here's the thing: there are right-wing groups that do want to see multiculturalism, and I feel like that's the whole. I feel like there's a problem there between the left seeing the right as purely evil, wanting all this sort of stuff. I see past that. I'm sort of like, yeah, fair enough. They've got their ideas. That's what they believe. That's fine. But it's sort of like, I don't know, there's that whole sort of thing. I think people should be recognized by their identity and all that sort of, it's important. Where people come from is important. I don't know. It's very complex, and it could take literally like weeks to try and explain it. But I don't know. I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy under the lives of capitalism, because I see it, and I'm not happy under capitalism living in a fucking house that I bought at the age of 18. This is the thing. I feel like there are people like that are my age that already have it so much more tough. There are people my age that are homeless and all this sort of thing. And I feel like under capitalism, they try. They really do try. They really do try to set up these non-for-profit organizations and all that sort of stuff. But then again, what happens with non-for-profit organizations? Non-for-profit organizations, 80% of their wealth goes towards their employees, and then the 20% go towards these actual people. I feel like these people need to have somewhere to go, and in order for that to happen, they need the government itself needs to build housing for these people. I feel like they need to physically just buy land somewhere, crown land. So we have this thing in Australia called crown land. It's the Queen, the King now owns it. The royal family owns it. Go and take that. Oh, and we've also got church land here. I don't know if you guys have church land.
No, we don't. No.
Okay. So I feel like go and take that, build units, build housing out there. And I'm not saying fancy things. I'm not saying like a mansion for like some homeless guy who's never worked a day in his life. I'm not saying that. I'm saying build a place, and a stable place, and an actual well-built place. I'm not saying built with like lead paint and asbestos and shit. I'm saying build a place where these people can literally just go and live. People, I feel like that's the whole sort of thing. I feel like people are entitled for a place to go, and I feel like a lot of homeless shelters don't actually offer the comfort of a home. And I feel like that's why maybe a lot of homeless people are afraid to go and seek shelter from a homeless shelter, or to go to a soup kitchen. It's this already preconceived notion that they're poor and therefore they're second-class citizens. And we need to bridge that gap by giving these people a place to live, having the infrastructure to be able to support that, and then also giving them a chance at least to sort of get their life on track. And if they can't, well, they can't. So, and that's a whole different issue. That's like people from low socioeconomic areas, and in itself, they could be victims of drug abuse or domestic violence and all that sort of stuff. They need to be cared for. And in Australia recently, the Labor government, which is our left-wing government, and this is the reason why I don't vote, because they always go back on their promises in one way or another. Our left-wing governments took away the 20, you were allowed to see a psychologist or therapist or seek help for any sort of mental issue sort of thing 20 times a year, and they've reduced that down to 10 times a year. This is the same government that put in Medicare and free healthcare. So that's pretty concerning, because guess where this money's going? Military spending.
Yeah.
Stop funding the military. Just take your resources out somewhere else, because they're needed somewhere else. I can walk down the street in Melbourne or Sydney, and I can come across 20 homeless people in my walk. And it's sad. It really is sad that in a country like ours, where there's so much profit and there's so much wealth, it can't be distributed, to be able to look after these groups. And I feel like that's what angers me so much, is I see in my town, I see dilapidated houses. I see houses that are not rebuilded after the flood. I see houses that haven't had any care from the government, because there's no incentive for the government to do these things. And it's sort of, they say we don't have the money. Yes, you do. You're a government. Why do you need capital to be able to go and rebuild a house?
Yeah.
Like you're not a family of three. You're not a family of five. Like, you are the government. Go and rebuild these people's houses. What's it going to cost you? It cost me to fix up my place here about almost 70 grand. 70 grand compared to what the government has in its reserves and everything is piss nothing. You could do my entire area. You could fix up my entire area, all government funded. You could then go up north into Queensland and fix stuff up there. We have so much wealth that it's just being held on to. And this is another thing. When you said something about the GDP not being high, fuck the GDP. I think that comes last. I feel like if you can help people into jobs and employment, and then also work on the ways in which they live their sort of quality of life improvements, fixing up infrastructure. I know I keep on saying it, but fixing up infrastructure, fixing up services, making these things more accessible, having free, accessible public transport. I'm not going to say healthcare, we already have it, but it can be better. It can absolutely be better. Mm-hmm. People deserve more. And this is not a government given thing. This is a basic human right, the right to exist, the right to live, the right to live safely, and the right to health. These are human rights that should exist. And I know you agree with a lot of this stuff, because it's a lot of the things that you agree with. But I feel like it needs to be pushed more. And this is the reason why I go that little step extra. I feel like the government itself isn't going to morally do the right thing 100% of the time. Therefore, I feel like to be able to take that power and give most of it to there should definitely be a governing authority. Absolutely, there should be a face of a nation. But there should be, I don't know, I feel like most of the power should be given back to the people that build these things, the people that build the infrastructure, the people that build the services, the people that are in the police force, the people that are in the fire department, the people that are in the ambulance services, in the health sector, in the childcare sector, in the, you know, in everything, like any job. It should be given back to the people that build this nation, and not what's trickled down to them. Basically what people live on is what's pissed down to them from the upper class. And what I want to see is, I want to see no difference between the classes. I don't want to have the elite, then the middle class, and then the lower class, and then the subhuman, you know, seeing what it is. I want everyone to be seen as equal, because we are equal. We are all people. And I don't feel like wealth should be a definitive sort of, you know, sort of factor in that. And I feel like when you go and you work for these factories, you know, warehouses, steel construction, all that sort of stuff, even where I work, the company in itself is monopolizing itself off of both your time and effort, and then also for me, I work in recruitment, so I help people get jobs, all of that sort of stuff. I feel like the corporation itself is monopolizing itself off of and innovating itself off of the time, effort, and then the sort of, what's the word?
Time, effort.
Let's just leave it at that, because I honestly can't think of the other word. But there's another thing, so don't worry. But it's, you know, they're building themselves up of this, and it's sort of like, and I know, it's like, it's the same thing with the oil companies, and then all of that, it all comes up again, and it's sort of like, because they're so international, and the tobacco lobbies, and then the alcohol lobbies, and then the gambling lobbies, the gun lobbies, they're all, like, the politicians are all in the pocket of it. And when you see it done in other countries, the West in itself goes, hey, that's corruption, you can't have that. And then, so I feel like, I don't know, man, it's kind of like, they're all, you know, it's all sort of based around money. And I don't really want to see a society in itself that's based around money. And when you said that innovation in itself doesn't exist under communism or something, you said that it's not there. It is there. Capital incentive is not it's not a thing to say that you know, people can't make art. There has been multiple great artists that existed under communist countries and all that sort of stuff, and musicians and inventors and manufacturers. They've all existed. It's not the monetary incentive for them to do great things. It's the incentive to themselves that they want to do these great things. It's not money, and money should not be a driving force in making the world in itself a better place.
Of course not. And that's where, again, I just think capitalism still is the way to go, because it is the ultimate equalizer, especially when it comes to education, especially when it comes to social democracy and making sure people have a way to move forward. Like you said, with the real GDP stuff, I mean, China is like 2,000 per person. Like, I mean, it kind of like, it comes back to like, I want to talk about a communist country. You're like, well, not them, but they do practice like a command economy. Like this is like what power ends up consolidating, and then we don't have elections. But to kind of just talk about your point about artists and other stuff like that, I mean, there is the incentive that, I mean, I don't really like artists, but like athletes, like we have the NFL, like the Players Association, like stuff like that, where it's like people, the owners who have the money through I mean, that's a question I would ask you before I even start talking about artists. Is how does someone get more money than another person? Is it working harder? Is it spending their money the right way? Is it having, like, how does someone end up with more money in the first place? That'd be my question to you, because even though we agree to a sense that, Jeff Bezos has too much money, he did it, and he had a brilliant idea. Maybe it's not worth 1 billion times over what it's worth, but he should have more money ultimately than me or you. So I mean, that's kind of the whole reason why we need capitalism, is because if you were to come up with an idea like Amazon that creates mass wealth that the government can then tax and use to create more fair societies, it's kind of I mean, and also the wealth that creates more jobs and better jobs, that's kind of capitalism's whole thing, is it creating more jobs, moving more people. It just seems like, wealth and money is kind of the thing that drives innovation at the end of the day. When you just compare China to America, I mean, China is just the obvious comparison, because the social credit, I mean, other stuff like that, people just, they don't have the incentive to own, pretty much just be their own person. I mean, it's just,
But there hasn't been a profit incentive before, like what you were saying with athletes. Back in the days of ancient Greece, when the Olympics first existed, they weren't just doing it for money.
yeah.
They were doing it because there was a genuine joy in doing it. And I feel like money can be made. Money has a right to exist. Money has a place. It's where people go to buy themselves a new desk. It's how people buy themselves a home, a nicer home. It's how people access higher standards of healthcare. But it's also how I feel like, in a way, to be able to accumulate wealth, you should be able to do that. I feel like you can, and then it's just whether you're hoarding that wealth to yourself as well. Because I feel like if you've got enough money,
Scarcity.
and I don't want to say that like people have to constantly. If you've got a surplus, you have to give away, because you really don't. But
Scarcity is the problem. That's the problem. We have too many artists, too many. That's the thing. That's what that's why we need capitalism, to keep people in check.
from
That's why
expressing
why
creative
that's
freedom.
why the government can't just build more homes unless they want to spend more money on it. They can't just get a construction team up there, because you have to hire the construction workers, and then you have to pay a premium on the construction workers. That's different with capitalism. I mean, Congress could write a bill and we could tax it out of the corporations, but that's why you don't want the government trying to come in and build the houses in the first place. You want the corporation, and then you want the taxing out of the profits. That's why ultimately capitalism, you can still get the same outcomes at the end of the day, if you have a mix of both. If you have this
You
rigorous
can, but someone always makes a boatload of money off of it, and then that
yes,
gets
because they
stopped by someone.
innovated, and they did, yes, because they innovated, and that's their prerogative, and that's what keeps society in check. Is the echelon, is the business owner from the worker. That dichotomy is always going to be there in society. That's just, I mean, that's
But it hasn't always been there, and it's only been a sort of new thing since the Industrial Revolution.
yeah, but we haven't
Uh,
always had iPhones. Yeah, exactly. The industrial, yes, you made my point. Exactly. There's so much wealth, and now there's scarcity of the MacBook, there's scarcity of the iPhone, compared to, when we were just focused on hunting animals and I mean, it keeps coming back that there's scarcity for high skilled labor and higher goods that
I'm not saying that people should just have automatic access to these things. I'm saying that they're still allowed to accumulate wealth and buy these things. That's not a problem. It's the sort of people should be paid,
I mean, that's ultimately the
appropriately. People
problem.
shouldn't be paid minimum
No,
wage
but
and all that
that's
sort
the
of stuff.
problem, because in a
Do
communist
you
country,
feel like people should be paid minimum wage for the greater good?
well, no, because I think everyone should have access to a union, but I think that ultimately in a command economy, that's in communism, that's the problem, is that no one gets to take home what they made. And then
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
that's
Yes, they do. That's already a preconceived sort of sort of identification. People do make money. People do, you're allowed to go to work and then take home your earnings. That's not how the government makes their money. The government makes their money from taxing massive amounts of tax on these businesses and stuff. He's looking it up.
Okay.
I mean, West Germany is still, what was it? People in the former East Germany earned 86% the after-tax income of their West German counterparts in 2017. So what does that mean? 86%? Oh, this is a reunification thing.
Yeah, I don't think the thing of Berlin exists anymore. It's people do make money under capitalism, under communism. Sorry, it's just the way in which the production
I know the
and all of that
government
is sort of
decides which properties you get. You don't have the purchasing power, which is a huge problem. The freedom of choice, like you said, you think it's an illusion under capitalism. It is an illusion under communism. You don't have the freedom of choice.
It's an illusion under both. It's
no.
It's
I can go get a part-time job right now, live at home with my parents, and then I can save up enough money to fly to Australia and talk to you and then fly back to America. And I had the freedom of choice to work a job and stay at home. In communism, that's just not going to be possible because I would still work the same job. I mean,
you're not. It's why do you think it's some sort of dystopia where you're assigned a job that you work until the day you die, where you earn nothing? I don't understand. Where do you get this notion from?
Because
that's how the Soviet Union worked, and that's not.
But that is a command economy. That's the thing.
I don't want a command economy. I want something else where people benefit from it. It's not capitalism because people aren't benefiting from it. You can look around it. Go into any major city, take a walk down the street, and then have a look at all the homeless.
The homeless, exactly. What about the people in the buildings working on Wall Street? That's the thing. There's always going to be people that are going to be left behind. That's scarcity. That's the reality.
It shouldn't be accepted though, and you've accepted this. You've accepted this and comes to terms with it. A big part of why of what I believe in is not making amends with the establishment itself. If there's a way to improve things, then it should be fought for.
Okay, well, again, what you've outlined is a command economy, which is being tried in China right now, and they walk by every atrocity in the daylight. So I mean, look, I'm all for the higher tax. Look, the corporate tax rate is at 22% in America. It should be 40%. I'm all for redistribution of wealth, which is a socialist concept, right? But I'm a capitalist and I believe in that. See, and I'm not a fascist. It's an amazing thing.
It was good. I still believe in what I believe. I haven't changed my mind. You haven't changed your mind, and I'm not trying to change your mind. But
and that's democracy. That's a beautiful thing. And we can go home and live in our houses after.
Yeah.
No political revolution.
Not yet.
Not yet. Whoa.
All right. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap up this episode. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. You guys had a great discussion. It was an honor having you here, David, giving your perspective. It was a good time. So thanks for being here.